What's up, YouTube? Firefist Chris here, and today I'm going to do a different type of video. This is going to be more of a discussion as well as a theory craft on the red-green law deck. This has been my primary deck for the One Piece TCG game so far. Currently, we still are at set 1. So I just want to kind of go through the deck. I did outlay here now. I also made a deck profile you can also check out on my channel. But for this theory craft, I kind of want to just go through some cards that potentially could be good as well as things I would change with the deck. But to get started first, I guess we'll talk about matchups for this deck. So in general, this deck, it relies a lot on getting resources and making sure you have a lot of characters on board. For this matchup versus Kaido or purple in general, you do want to kind of play more aggressively against that type of deck since it's more of a slower pace type of deck. And then late game, obviously you have too big of beaters to be able to get over things. So you do want to control the tempo by getting lives off of Kaido as early as possible. It's definitely, I would say it's definitely a good matchup depending on how the Kaido player is playing. Then for the blue matchup, it's a little bit differently. You kind of have to play it more calculated. You can't really put a lot on board just because they have a lot of blockers as well as counters, and being able to control the tempo. Blue deck is really good at doing that. So you kind of have to just play a little bit more reserved with using the abilities, such as like summoning jewelry and not really using the ability to not rest itself. So that way, just making sure that you can keep bodies on the board to be able to use your law's effect. So for that matchup, I would say that I do think that the blue deck has a better chance of winning that matchup. Same thing with green. Against green for the Kid deck, or as well as for the Odin deck. It's kind of similar where for this type of matchup, you definitely want to play, you kind of want to go aggro when you have an opportunity, but kind of play more control style with this deck. So I also did decide to add in the Shanks in the deck profile, and this is simply for the decks that put out larger, obviously larger cost and bigger power characters to just kind of help me push for game or get over them. So this deck does have a hard time kind of getting over things, depending if they're, too big. Then for the last matchup, I would say against Red Rush, that deck is kind of like back and forth. You definitely want to just make sure you protect yourself with the blockers. So obviously you have Chopper, you have Capone. I do run one of the Killer, as we can see here. That's also a blocker. But I've just been theory crafting, thinking about what things I can change. So to get into some cards that I think are worth pointing out, first of which being the 1-cost Nami. I did have this in my deck previously. It does have a good ability where if you go ahead, activate during your main phase once per turn, you can give one rested card to a leader or one of your characters. I did decide out of this just because Brook does the same. And I would just rather play more Brooks instead of playing the Nami. So that was one idea I had. The other being the film Gordon. So he has an interesting ability where on play you can place one card from your hand at the bottom of your deck and then draw one card. So I do find this useful ability. It's just kind of hard just fitting in space for this card, just because you can unclog certain cards out of your hand. As well as, it's a 2 cost. It doesn't rely on that much. And you get his ability. You can bounce this back with the law. You can summon one of the other laws. And then, obviously be able to combo out from there. Another card I was thinking about is the Sanji. Just because it gains rush if you have 2 Dawn on it. And this in combination with the Brook is really good just because obviously you can just summon 2. Rest 2 Dawn, bring this out, and then bring out the Brook, and then give the 2 rested Dawns to Sanji, so immediately gets rush, and really you're not getting anything, it's just a free body with Brook, so I did like that ability. I did have this in my deck previously. Like I said, it's just kind of hard trying to make space with this deck because you definitely want to keep it as consistent as possible with the 1-drops and keeping that engine going. So that's another card that I think more Law players should be looking into, is that Sanji, especially if you're running 4 Brooks. I would cut out some of the engine for the Wano engine. I primarily use it because I find Izo to be really important in a lot of matchups, as well as Momonosuke being a 1-drop that also searches. It's just another character that you can easily bring out because you want to make sure you have 5 to be able to use the Law ability. So next we have, this is for an event card, and this will be for Radical Beam. Which Radical Beam, it's also really useful just because since you only get 4 life with Law, this card says for your leader or one of your characters gains 2,000 power. Then if you have 2 or less life cards, it gains an additional 2,000. So it's a 4,000 1 cost event. Which, like I said, since you only have 4 lives, it's very often that you end up having 2. So that was one thing I was looking into, bumping up more. I do run 1 in my deck so far for that reason. I've been thinking about cutting 1 or making space for another jet pistol, just because, like I said, this deck does have a problem with getting over larger monsters or characters. So having a combination of summoning Otama, lowering something by 2,000, and then jet pistoling is one of the best ways to get rid of things on board. Another event card I was thinking about playing again is Paradise Waterfall, which your leader gains 2,000, and then you can set one of your characters as active. So I find this really useful, especially if you're playing against the green deck, where they're resting cards. They're resting cards, obviously using their green's effect. And then if they're resting one of your blockers, you can go ahead and play this, protect something, and then set something as active. So if a blocker they set back, you can make it active again. And then going through the list, this is kind of, I have one more card here now, and that is Law himself. So this Law, I did cut this card out. However, I do want to make space to add him back in. He has a on-play ability where you can set one of your Supernovas or Heart Pirates rested characters with a cost of 5 or less. And this is really helpful for bringing this out to get the Luffy set as active, or even the Rush Zoro. Or even, you can get the Kid, you can get the Law, seeing as those are supernovas. So I do find this card really useful. It's just that once he's on board, he's a 5/6. He's not bad by any means, but it's just kind of hard to make that space, especially with this kind of build. But this is another card I see a lot of people taking out, and I do hope that one day it does come back, to be more relevant for this deck, as well as we see into the future for the other sets of the One Piece trading card game. Then for the other ones, these are just bumping up some numbers, which was Nekomushi. A lot of people do run like 3 or 4 of this card. I find that a lot against the purple matchups as well as the blue matchups, it's not really that useful because a lot of times they don't have characters with a cost of 3 or less. So if you see it late game, it's kind of a dead card, honestly. It's good against green, obviously. It's good against red. But like I said, against blue, purple, even that crocodile deck, when they have larger, cost characters on the board, it really becomes irrelevant. So that's why I only keep it in 2 in this deck. The next one being Nico Robin. I was going to add in another Robin, but a lot of times it's kind of a similar issue with Nekomushi where it feels like you can easily play around Nico Robin now. So having the ability of just, having 2, you can still see the card as well as you can search it with Nami. I felt like that was a good ratio for this deck. So I wouldn't bump it up anymore. I do see people, they were previously running 4, now 3. I think the meta is going to go to 2 of them. Next being kind of a similar issue again is the 3-drop killer. Has a great ability on play, KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. So it's really good, especially in combination if you have Okiku. So just being able to kill something for free is really good. And speaking of Okiku, we would have Okiku here. and obviously her ability is really strong. Issue with her, I'm just trying to make sure I don't have too many of the Wano cards. I just want to keep it a small engine. With Momonosuke being able to search Otama as well, that's why I really think every Lost player should be playing Momonosuke, because Otama is one of the most important cards, being a 2K counter. They can also reduce things on play. And the last card for this theory would be for Killer, which is the blocker. For this deck, I do want to try to see if I can make it more defensive, because I find a lot of times where I get rid of a lot of resources, and then you kind of run out of resources and kind of get outgrinded by a lot of the other decks. So in the comments, I would like to have discussion on what you guys think we can change for this deck, as well as the Law deck moving forward. And this was the first part for my discussion on the theory graph for this Law deck. I want to thank you guys so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe.